going over. And it looks like Twitch has connected, and YouTube is working, and Facebook is working. I'm on 2 Facebook pages at this point, just to let you know. My personal and, my personal and my QTalk page. So, see what happens here. So, hi everyone. If you are watching a recording, we're gonna start this in about 3 or 4 minutes, so you can go ahead and fast forward, okay? Just finishing up some final preparations for the class today. Whoa, come on. Everybody's up and running? Honey? Honey? I said everything's up and running? Okay, I can't hear you. All right. Now I can't hear you. I heard you before, and now I can't hear you. What'd you just do? Yes. Okay. 2 minutes and we're going to get started. Double check on a couple of the things here. Make sure that our technology is up and running. Unlike what happened last week, unfortunately. But so our vacation was, I don't know, long. Is that what you would say, honey? Our vacation was long on the road. It was a total of 64 hours on the road, and you know, good times, I suppose you could say. Let's see. Wait. Why isn't this up? There we go. Okay. But yeah, so vacation was just sort of long, but it was nice to visit. It was nice to visit our son and see what he's up to and see his new house and help him just a little bit. He wasn't, what's funny is I shared this on the Zoom over the weekend that he wasn't as motivated as I was to renovate his bathroom. And I had a couple people go, that's not surprising. So that just makes me laugh anyway. So yeah, that's my story. He wasn't as motivated as I am, which is, I don't know, I guess it was sort of disappointing, but it was interesting we went out there to see his graduation. I say see. It was virtual. We knew it was going to be virtual. We knew we were going to be spending it in his living room. Little did we know that $40,000 a year was only going to bring you a pre-recorded PowerPoint. Literally, they pre-recorded this thing and they posted it at 9 o'clock-ish. And we're like, wait, that's a pre-recording. There's not even going to be a speaker on Zoom or anything like that, Maybe the dean of your department, I don't know. But so we basically fast forwarded the video and woohoo, Alexander Gregory, his name came up. He stopped it there and we ended up on the TV all day and made ourselves brunch. Because what else are you going to do, right? It is what it is, and I find it sort of interesting how they decided to handle it. But it was nice to get away, and I can't believe it's been 2 weeks since the last video. But here we are, or since the last live. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. Let's get started with a little business. So this is QTalk Live, and I am on simulcasting on Facebook, my personal one, and QTalk. So 2 Facebooks, YouTube, and Twitch. So thanks for coming back and joining me today. Periscope, so funny. I finally got Periscope up and running, and officially it is going to be dead here in a couple of months. So we're just going to take that off the board, and I think I will move it over to Twitch. So we'll see. I'm sorry, Twitter, but we'll see what we do with that. I don't know. I'm just still sort of playing around with that. Thanks everyone who tried to tune in last week for Jeff Hunter with the opal caps. unfortunately, his technology failed on him. As much as he tried and as much as we had done testing the week before, it wasn't, it just sort of failed. And so Jeff and I have been working together to get his technology up and running again. And we have him scheduled or rescheduled for January 6th. So if you're looking forward to seeing him demonstrate cabbing boulder opals, it'll be January 6th. He is also committed to doing virtually ever crafting for the next event in April, by the way. Virtually ever crafting coming in April again. So we're excited to have him for that. And, you know, we'll make sure that all the technology and everything is working for all these things coming up. So what else is going on? So today we have the Pocket of Posies. This is the hot project. I have not officially posted the calendar for January, but the projects are on the Urban Beater website. So if you're interested in projects for January, they're there, but the calendar is not. I will be finishing that up very, very quickly here. I had the final proof last night, so this is good. All right. Oops, I forgot one thing. Let me grab it. So funny, in the process of getting my stuff ready, I put something away thinking I didn't need it. So I do need it. Anyway, so, and for January, we're doing a free Zoom with purchase of kit. We're going to do this class here. So we are calling it the boho ring because it looks like a bow. Anyway, so that's my story, and you can do it in a tricolor or you can do it in a single color, but you'll get enough materials to do both. Anyway, all right, so what are we doing today? We are doing the hot project of the Pocket of Posies. Here we go. And what you'll need, here are all the tools you're going to need today. You'll need a leather mallet, of course, a bench block. We're going to be cutting some tubes, so you'll need a saw, and a tube cutting plier will make your life so much easier. If you don't have one of these, you definitely need to have one of these or pick it up because it's, you know, it makes tube cutting a lot easier, either with round tubes or even square tubes. A divider makes your life also a lot easier. A pair of chain nose pliers will be helpful. Tweezers are helpful but not necessary. A pair of bezel shears and some and a chasing hammer. Okay, so in materials, I'm using a texture plate. I'm using brass. Frankly, I'm just using scrap stuff to make this, and it's just sort of fun. Some silver wire, fine silver wire would be nice to make all the little granules in here. Okay, some tubing for the top. That's how we're making our bail, and some wire, and these fun things. These are your these are just like copper minis of flowers and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. There we go. All right, a little too much. There we go. Okay. Oh, the other thing that you'll need is you'll need a steel DAP block and a DAP to go with that so that we can make the fun flower shape. Okay, so pretty easy. Oh, if you're unfamiliar with the format right now, we have switched over from Minimal Metal Mondays to Hot and Cold Mondays, and this is all based on the complimentary project based on the first book that I did called Hot and Cold Jewelry Connections, where all the projects were sister projects. So that's what we're doing here too, is we're doing sister projects. So 2 weeks ago I did the cold project, and now we're doing so this was the cold project from 2 weeks ago, and this time we're going to do the hot project. So basically the projects are all more or less very similar, except one is done with heat and one is done with not, because I do recognize that not everybody has a solder setup. And you know, doing a cold project, it's a lot less expensive and a lot less intimidating for many people. But trust me, you want the flame, you want the heat, because it's a lot of fun. Okay, so let's jump in, let's do this. Okay, so first thing is you need to decide how big you want to make your pendant. So for me, what was this? This was about 5/8 by just over an inch. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my divider and I will make that measurement like so. And I'm just going to drag it on the inside and score my metal. And how I use a divider is you want the outside on the outside edge like that, and then you're going to put some pressure on there and it will create a line. You probably can't see that, but there's a score line right there. Take out your shears and that's your marking. So, like so. Okay. And then you'll just trim it the other direction. You can score it again if you want, but you know what? I'm not even gonna bother. I'm just gonna cut it like so. Okay, set that aside. And you know what? I don't like to keep my corners, if you've been watching and following along, I don't like to keep my corner sharp and square. I like my corners in a radius because it just, for me, it's a little bit more of a finishing touch, and also just makes it nicer to wear because you don't have sharp edges, right? So what I do is I just take out my cutters. You can even use your side cutters, and I cut a slight angle in it. And it's easier to cut an angle and make it consistent than to sit here and file it and to make it consistent. So by cutting that angle, oops, let's come in a little bit. By cutting that angle, it makes the job a lot easier and faster. And right there, I already have a nice radius, right? So we'll just do that on all the edges, and that just makes it sort of round. No big deal. Just like so. Okay. And because we've gnarled the edges, you can see that, we're going to need to flatten this. And my texture sheet have all been used and rolled a couple times to make other things. So it's probably really springy. And if your texture sheet is really springy, you can always anneal it, which I will probably need to do because see, it's not really flattening out so much. So let's go ahead and anneal this, okay? We're just going to put it on right there. And annealing is just a process of heating your metal so that so that it opens up the molecules and make it a little bit more pliable. So we're just going to heat this till we start seeing nice color changes. This is brass, so it's a bit harder and a lot springier. So you want to give it a nice anneal, like so. Let's quench that. And, okay. Just like so. Cool. And not enough to have to pickle. So I'm not even going to pickle that. But it's nice and flat at this point. All right. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and prep my flour. So what you want to do is you want to find a well that the flour fits into. There we go. And make sure that your dap fits inside of there, because if it doesn't fit inside, it's not going to work, right? And with your leather mallet, go ahead and, let's see, there's two sides to this. So I want this side to be showing. Like so. And these metal pieces we do have at theurbanbeater.com too. By the way, if you're looking for any of these tools or the little copper pieces, you can find it on our website. And I included the links on the Facebook Q Talk Live description so that you have it there. Okay, so there we have our flour ready. Let's go ahead and take out our wire. This is 16 gauge wire, or you can use thicker if you want to. That's sort of up to you. Let's see, so we'll need some side cutters. I am all caught up here. Hold on. I have wires going all over the place. And I'm just going to make the stem and the leaf pieces. So I'm just going to guesstimate it to be about there. Okay, so, oops, before I do that, it's easier to bend it when it's long than when it's short. So I'm going to go ahead and bend it now. so. There we are. That will do. Take out my round nose pliers and let's make the leaves. Just bends, that's all. Just little teardrop bends. Like so. I feel like it's a little big, so I'll just cut it down. And I'm going to trim it just because I feel like it's a little bit big, right? So just play around with your pieces and get creative and, you know, make it the way you want it. Let's see. Whoa. Okay. Just like so. There we go. Cool. And then we'll do one more. And you know what? I'm going to help myself here. So there's a little bit of a beveled edge on this wire. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut it off. Because my cutters are really nice and flush. So, and on this one, I'm going to change it up. By the way, you can get instructions on all these projects at theurbanbeater.com. They're just $5. It's one way to contribute to what we're doing and trying to keep things going here. As you all know, all of our teaching opportunities have gone to pot this year. But anyway, so this is how we're doing it. So this is a little bit change up from the instructions that were given. I thought it might be, as I was putting everything together this morning, I thought it might be fun if I hammered this a little bit. So before I cut it off, because it's so hard to just hold this tiny little piece and hammer it, I'm just going to leave it on the wire and hammer it. And just a little bit on that edge there. Here, I'll come in really tight so you can see what I'm doing here. Can you see that? It makes it a little bit different and it gives it a little bit of a flare. You see the difference there? This is just to add a little texture and a little interest to separate yourself from everybody else who's just doing basic things, right? It's just these little tiny things that brings a little shush, right? Is that the word shush? to your designs, okay? So that's what we're doing there. And I'm going to go ahead and trim this because it's going this way. No. Okay, like this. Sorry. All right, so I've got two pieces, one flat and one not, just because I can. It's a demo. If I was doing this for real, I probably would have flattened both of them to match them up. And we'll go from there. Oops. Let's go back. So we'll set those aside, like so. Put some tools away. Okay, next up, we're going to make these little granules, right? So here, I'm just going to use scrap. And if you want all your granules to be the same, the best advice is go ahead and take out wire and cut them all the same size if you want all of your granules to be the same size, okay? So here, I have a scrap piece running around, and the reason why I'm going to go ahead and reheat that is because it's not really a nice round shape. Okay, you can see that there. I know, teeny weeny. I'll move this to the middle so you can see that too. And you'll see just by reheating it, it will reshape for me nice and round. I don't know why I have this weird shape granule, but there it is. Okay, and notice it's nice and round again. All right. And then I'm going to heat this one here. And right as that's cooling, I'm going to pick it up so it doesn't stick to my board. A little less work if I go ahead and do that. So you can see that there. And same thing for this one. We're just going to heat that. Again, this is fine silver that I have, and it's just some scrap. And yes, I do keep all my scrap for this very reason. So, you know, you could you could challenge yourself and take all your scrap out, make 100 granules, and make it into some sort of a design. That would be fun, right? Come on, baby, heat up. Almost. There we go. Nice. Okay, right before it's completely cool, we're going to grab it so it doesn't stick to the bottom. There we go. Quenching on the side. Set that aside. Going to quench the other one too. And set that aside. Okay, so our pieces are coming together. Oops. Obviously, I'm out of practice because I keep forgetting which way, which way to zoom in and out. All right, so 2 weeks, I know. 2 weeks and I have forgotten everything. All right, so tweezers, you can see here that this piece will go in there, and these little pieces will be accents down here. All right. So now we'll cut the tube for this. Let's go ahead and take a measurement and see what you want. So I'm going to use my divider because frankly I hate using a ruler. I'd rather use a divider any day. Understand that when you do a tube bale like this, something you want to consider, okay, is the length of it. The longer the length of your tube, the more flat your chain will sit. Think about it, because it has to go across this. So if you make it really long, the chain goes like this and then it goes up, right? I can't say that's like great, but so you just have to be aware when you're using a tube bale what that's going to do to your chain. And if you're doing like a snake chain, sometimes that's a little challenging and it might kink your snake chain. So if you're using a snake chain, I would go smaller rather than bigger. Something to consider. And of course, the other thing you have to consider when you're doing a tube is make sure that your inside diameter is slightly larger than the diameter of your chain so that the chain can pass through. And it's not just the chain really, it's about the catch right at the end, unless you plan on soldering on your own catch and making this a permanent and making it a permanent chain that you can't take, or a permanent pendant where you can't exchange the pendant out for the chain. Okay, so then I take this measurement and I'm just going to put it right onto and score the tube like so. This is a copper tube. By the way, copper tubing comes from, at this size, comes from the train model industry. So if you need copper tubing, one of the least expensive ways to go about it is, first of all, Amazon has it for really inexpensive, and secondly, the model train industry. Not really sure what they're using it for, but it's there, and yeah, I know the things that I have learned along the way. Okay, so hold on for me for a second here, and we are going to switch cameras. Let's see. Oops, wrong one. Again, this is what happens when I am off for a little bit. I forget what to do because we're going to do a little sawing and we need to change cameras. All right, so let's see. Brilliant. Okay, so we're back up here and we'll show you what's going on. So I have scored, so you can see my tube, and if you look at the two cutting pliers, there is a slit in the middle. So you want to put that score mark right in between there so you can see it. It's right in there. You can't see it, but I can see it. Okay, and we're going to put it on the table. You don't want to hold it up here suspended in any way, shape, or form. You want to make sure that it's braced so it gives it leverage on the table, like so. You'll take out your saw, your jeweler's saw, and we're going to do it like this. And we're just going to run it right down the middle, like so. If it catches on you, don't force it, just stroke it up. Okay, at some point it will get better. Do not squeeze onto the, see, it's like doesn't want to move. So I'm just going to keep stroking it up until you can start stroking it back down. No big deal. You don't want to squeeze onto the tube too hard, because if you do, you're going to get a square tube. Okay, gently. There we go. So if you look at the tube cutting pliers, right? If you put your tube in like so, and you squeeze too hard, it will be the square shape. Okay, so don't do that. So here we have our tube. Let's go ahead and file those ends down just a little bit because I have some burrs and some sharp edges. And, oops, where's my file? Oh, right in front of me. And of course, you know, I don't know why, but I can't seem to cut a tube perfectly straight. I'm always filing it back. So if this is your problem, you want to give yourself a little bit margin for error, just like so. And on the other side too, because it probably did not start off straight. Yeah, so you can see it's slightly off, okay? Symmetry is a thing. Symmetry is a good thing. Like so, okay. All right, there we are. And we want to go ahead and sand that because I know that there's burrs and whatnot. So I'm just going to sand it just a little bit. And then, you know what, I forgot, what do you do when there's burrs inside of your tube, right? You can always pull out a round file and see if, you can get it in there. But there's this thing called brooches that are really cool. And they are used like that. And you just put them in and you just start spinning it around inside of your tube and it will take all those burrs away. That's a great use for a brooch right there. And what's really nice is, I don't know who's doing tubing this small unless you're doing some really fancy rivets, but look how small these go to. They're teeny. Look at that. It's like a needle, but they're really cool and they have a great function. And it's one of those things that once I met it, I had to have it. It was, you know, I just love it. Okay, I still have some sharp edges. I'm going to take that off just a little bit. Okay, cool. All right, so let's get soldering. So we'll go ahead and set this up. Like so. So the question is, do we want to solder this in one shot or do we want to solder this in several? It is absolutely up to you. But as always, if you've been following along with me, you know how I like to solder everything in one shot. It's a thing, right? It's a total thing. So let's see if we can give it a whirl. I'm going to go ahead and switch out cameras here in a second. I think you can see this better from here. Okay. Yep, got to move the paper out because I'm going to torch it. All right, so here we're going to take some copper solder. And I'm going to start with the flower because where I place my flower is how I'm going to build everything else out, right? So just put some solder on the bottom, just like so. And I'm going to put it here. And because there's a hole in it, the solder is going to come right through the hole. I'm not going to put any more solder down. I'm just going to put my granule inside of it. Okay. And then I'm actually going to use 2 tweezers here because I feel like I'm all fumbles today. And I'm going to put a little teeny weeny bit of solder. Can you see that? It's teeny onto 2 ends of this because I don't want this to bleed all over the place, right? And I'm going to put that down just like that. And it's sort of under the flower because it's a stem. All right. So then let's see. What are we doing? We're doing you. All right, so I'm going to keep working this way, putting solder on each one of these pieces. I don't feel completely compelled to slather solder throughout the entire piece because if you're noticing how small these pieces are, there's no need to put that much solder on. And you know, if you are a beginner, most beginners have a tendency to put way too much solder on things. And you'll learn as you go. the less solder you put on it, the neater the piece will be, right? So I want it on the bottom of that. Turn that over and do it like so. So you want to keep your work really nice and neat, right? There is a fine line between not enough solder and too much solder, but less is really more. And by the way, I'm using copper solder paste, so it really has a tendency to bleed all over the place. Not only because it's paste, but really because it's copper. And that's why I have a tendency never to do copper in the work. Well, I'm going to say my real work, okay? This is sort of my fun work, all right? So, let's see. Don't drop the granule. Okay. There we go. And I like to pick up my granules one at a time and dip it into the solder. For me, that is the easiest way to go. Another way to go too is to place the solder onto the piece and put the granule on top of it, right? But you have to know where you're going with those granules. I don't always know where I'm going. That's the part of the problem. Ugh. Okay. Flat bottom. Play nice. Not playing nice. All right, so I'm gonna have to go. Then it's not playing nice. I can't seem to get a grip on this granule. So I'm just gonna put a tiny little bit down on here. And then I'll place the granule on top of it. Just like so. So this is just, you know, really detailed work. That's all this is, right? It's not hard. It's just taking the time to do it, that's all. Okay. And again, I'm putting the smallest amount on here. Okay, can you see that? Teeny weeny. I know I keep saying that teeny weeny word, but it is really just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. You can, if you want to, go ahead and solder the tube on here. That's up to you. But I'm going to show you something else. The problem with soldering the tube on at this point is that because it's flat to the board, the tube is actually leaning forward. If you want the tube to be centered to this back plate, you're going to have to do something else. And I'll show you that here in a second. So I'm going to set that aside. We'll go ahead and solder this. Trickiest part of this is knowing when this piece solders. This unfortunately comes with a little bit of experience. You can actually see it sinking. And sort of like sucking into the piece is how you know. And you see that flame that's coming up? That flame is just flux. That's okay. Okay, and the other part of the experience too is that you can see the solder flow. So here I'm a little bit skeptical. Okay, so I know that has flowed, but I'm a little skeptical that it did not solder to the back plate. So I'm just going to go ahead and heat the back plate to ask the solder to go to it. Because remember, solder follows heat. So if that back plate never gets hot enough, the solder just ran up, and although you saw solder flow, it may not have made its connection. Remember that, okay? Because it's copper solder, we always take a deep breath before we pick it up. There it is. Ooh, maybe. Ah, see, I was right. There it is. Whoops. Uh-huh. Had a feeling that happened a little too fast, okay? But all my other pieces are on. So clearly, how do you know what happened and at what stage you're at? Okay, so here, if I look at this piece closely, you'll see that a tiny little bit of solder flowed. Not a lot. If you look in the flour, which by the way, I've already thrown in the pickle, you'll see a lot of solder flowed up through that flour, which means it followed the heat, that all my heat was from above, right? So the solder flowed up into the flour instead of making the connection onto the back plate. So a lot of times, I'm going to put that in the pickle, a lot of times students reach out to me going, I can't get this to solder. I can't get this to solder. My first question always is, which piece did the solder flow onto? Because usually when you're soldering two pieces, right? So if you have two pieces and the solder has flowed all to this piece, but not this one, that means you put too much heat here and not enough here. For solder to happen, both pieces have to come to the same temperature, the flow temp of the solder. And that's when it makes the connection. Hope that makes sense. I know. I'm sitting here thinking, why am I going in such depth about soldering? I don't know. Most of you guys should know this already, right? But it's a good reminder. It's a good reminder. So if you have any questions, do throw it out there. And I see Debbie has put a question out there, put on tripod, question mark. That's exactly what I was going to do next. And I'm going to tell you why. But while we are pickling here, let's see. Okay, pull the flour out of the pickle. My towel has gone missing. There we are. Okay, we'll clean that off. See, you can see all the solder flowed up to the flour. Okay. And then here we are. And Ashley, now that this has pickled, yeah, I don't even see solder on there. So that might not even be solder that I was looking at earlier. Okay. So easiest thing to do to remedy this is to put it on a tripod, like so, as Debbie said. Because we're going to heat from the bottom. Clearly the bottom wasn't getting hot enough for this to happen. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a little tiny bit more solder on here. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. Okay. Just like so. We're going to put it right there. And so by heating from the bottom, I'm going to be able to get the back plate hot enough, right? Just right in there, right from below. You want to make sure you have a tool in hand, just in case it moved like it did, but you know, it actually moved to a place that I liked. So I'm going to get this really hot right underneath that flour. It's brass. I don't feel compelled to move this all over the place like a lot of people do. And then I'm going to come right over to the top. It's hot. And I'm pretty darn sure that had to have flowed. How do I know? Because it got so red. And we're using copper solder, which means it's really soft. Okay. And yes, I'm still talking because I need to give this a moment to set. Okay. It's copper solder. Copper solder needs a minute. All right, look at that. It worked. True test. Try to pick it off. Not coming off. Okay. I don't know where that black spot came from. It is not a hole. Huh, interesting. Anyway, throw it in the pickle. All right, let's set this up for the next round here. So the thing is, you need to get, if you want your tube to sit in the, or I'm sorry, your back plate to sit in the middle of the tube, you could, I suppose, do it two ways. Put the tube down and hold it like that. Good luck, right? That the tube doesn't start rolling on you. You could put it into, now that I think about it, you could put it into a honeycomb block. That's a little cumbersome for this chica. So I am going to take out some wire, some copper wire, and do it slightly differently. Hey, so this is where all my scrap comes into play. Hold on. Look, I happen to have some scrap from the abacus project. I'm going to flatten this puppy out and I'm going to use it as my lift. I think it's going to work really well. Okay. All I'm doing is I have it, again, it's just a piece of scrap, right? You can use a piece of wire, whatever you need to get this to lift up a little bit. And let's see, is that too high? It's too high anyway. All right, that doesn't work. Find another piece of scrap in here. See what I can do. So what I'm essentially going to do here is I'm trying to create a lift to put the piece onto, and then the tube will butt up to that, right? So that's too high. Let's see. So we're still pickling while I'm messing around with this. Let's see here. What? I have my scrap pile, if you're wondering what I'm doing. Okay, so here I have a piece of wire. It's probably about 20 gauge wire. I think that's enough. And I'm just going to make a little coil out of this. So this is a bit of tricky business here, what I'm doing. Because when I have suggested this to people, they end up soldering this lift to whatever it is that they're lifting. So make sure you're free of solder and that you don't do that. So here I'm going to flatten it so that it lays nice and flat. Like so. Set that aside. And then let's grab the piece out of the pickle. Here we are. Quench that. Again, don't know what that black spot is, but okay. Oh, well, it's coming off. Oh, we're good. Okay, so I'm going to put this on here. So what this does is it just lifts it just a little bit, right? Or you're not flat. So it's off of the board, and then I'm going to take my tube and I'll put it up there so it sits a little bit better. Okay. Yes, you can use steel wire to lift this instead of copper wire. I just always have copper wire running around. Let's see. So I put a little bit of solder on the bottom of that. And we're going to butt this up here. And we're going to try to center it a little bit. There we go. Is that centered? Let's see. Yeah, good enough. Okay. So here, what you need to do is you got to heat this whole area and the tube. You can't just heat the tube because remember, the solder will just go right into the tube. So you got to make sure that that back plate gets heated too. So I'm heating that whole area just like so. Be careful if you're using silver not to melt it because I'm using copper and brass. It's a little harder to melt. And you'll see the solder come right through there just like that. And it's a nice connection. You can probably see it in your screen there that it went right down the middle like so. Okay. Okay, let's quench that. And throw it in the pickle. Okay, so while it's in the pickle, let's do a little bit of cleanup here. So what's coming up? Let's see what's coming up in January, the boho ring. I have a couple other projects coming up. We do have a a step-by-step surprise. I'm giggling because I've already made the step-by-step surprise for February, I think 3rd. It's called Valentino. Can we guess what that is? And it's sitting here. I'm looking at it on the side, and I'm just so tempted to show you because I'm so excited about this project. It's another one of those. I know. What can I say? Okay, so the question was no sanding? No. I never sand my tube, ever. Because it's a straight surface onto a straight surface. And the other thing too is, you know, I'm talking about a 24, maybe 20 gauge piece, which is plenty of surface if you think about it. And here I'll show you. Hold on. Let's see. Let's grab a piece. I'm gonna grab some metal here. Okay, so this is easily an 18 gauge piece of metal, right? You will see this here. You see, that's a lot of surface that you have to solder onto, okay? It's not, the reason why you would sand it is to create more of a surface. And for me also, I already know, if I sanded a flat surface onto this tube, it would likely roll off and not hit that flat surface. So that's a risk that you run too. So here it's just fine. It is more than enough to do it. Okay, let's see how we doing here in the pickle. A little tiny bit more. And then we'll pull it out, put it in some liver sulfur. You know, my liver sulfur got cold. Let me stick it in the microwave just for a few seconds here while we wait for it to pickle. Okay. Let's see how we're doing. If you have any sharp edges after you're done filing, you do want to sand that too, just to make it nice, you know. Okay, there we are. Better. Okay, we'll clean this up with a brass brush. Just to get some of those copper oxides off the brass. Yes, if your brass turns to pink, it's not because of contaminated pickle, okay? And it did not electroplate. What it did do when you did this is the copper, because brass is made of copper and zinc, the copper came to the surface. And so basically you're depleting the brass of copper. So how do you get back to this nice brass color? Like this. And if it's really bad, pull out some steel wool or maybe some sandpaper, and that will definitely bring it back. Okay, so we're going to clean this up just like so. Almost done. There we are. We'll stick it in here. And let's see. Oh, done. How quickly that happens. And I dropped it. Wow. So there. We cleaned it up so that we can clean it again. Actually, as much as that's done, I want it to be more black in the recesses. I'm going to throw it back in for a second. Give it a little bit more time. And this time, I'm going to clean it up with some steel wool. I want to really get in there and get into those little tight little crevices, and I'll show you how to get into those little crevices. Okay, let's see. So you'll want a pair of tweezers, and maybe a skewer is always nice. Let's see how we're doing. Better. Brass is always funky to me. Oh, okay. Because notice how the copper got really black, but the brass was a little bit more of a struggle to get there. So if you want to get a real intense patina, you'll have to go a little bit longer. All right, so I'm going to clean this up. And we'll use the steel wool to bring it back like so. And if you want to get under that flower and into that flower, what you'll want to do is you'll take off a little bit of steel wool, pull out your tweezers, a steel wool, and just wrap it around like so. Because your fingers aren't that small. Well, my fingers aren't that small. Okay, and notice I can control that. The hazard here in doing what I'm doing is scratching the piece with your tweezers. So be really careful to make sure that the tweezers are not going to work its way down to the metal and scratch the metal, because that's just annoying, right? So I'm just going to do it like that. See if I can get it inside of there. And pretty easy peasy. Okay, so the piece is a little bit big. And that's how you do it. Now, if you don't want to do it this way, you can also pull out your brass brush on the end brush and put it on your flex shaft, okay? Like so. We're just about done. By the way, I threw up a very quick Zoom for today when we're all done here at 2:30. We're putting up the Swarovskis for sale. It's going to be 30% off, which means it's 30% off is going to be even 30% off of Fire Mountain's lowest price. So if you're interested, join me. The link has been posted onto the Facebook description, this video's description, and it's also on the Q Talk page. I posted it about, I don't know, 2 hours ago or so. But you can definitely join me and see what's there. Okay, so notice it's coming back. It's getting nice and clean. If you want to get further into these spaces and you can't do it with that tweezer, wrap it around a skewer. Let's see. Like so. Or a toothpick, right? This is helpful. The nice thing about doing it on a skewer is that it doesn't have a tendency to scratch anything. But this is what we do if we're going to do it by hand. Of course, you can use your 3M bristle brushes. Those are just expensive. You know how I am. And I'm just going to get in there and clean it like so. See, it's coming up. Nice. All right, so if you have any questions, do throw them out. What's coming up next week? I don't know. Wednesday is going to be the step-by-step surprise pinned. And then, hey, Friday is Christmas, so we're taking the day off to bake. And then we're back on Monday. I don't know what we're doing on Monday. I can't remember. But I'm pretty sure I'm doing a ring. So that's my story anyway. Okay. There we go. Let's see, this guy will probably do a little bit better. So no questions, Andy? Everybody's got this. You got your tools. You got your little copper minis. You can make these fun little projects with it. Okay. I'm happy. There it is. And actually, here's the original. Clearly, I took a little bit more time out to clean it up. Okay. But, and I'm pretty sure I used the brass brush on a flex shaft to get it really nice and cleaned up. Okay. So that's my story for today. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Please keep sharing. This is how we can keep doing this, is if you continue to share our videos and let everybody know we're out here. Hopefully I'll see you guys at 2:30 on the Zoom just for fun. Or you can even just swing by and say hi on the Zoom and let me know that you're out there. We really appreciate everybody who continues to follow us and show us your support. All right, until Wednesday. Have a great day.